Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow good stories. In the dimly lit room, a man slammed a wooden cane onto the floor and stomped his foot, shattering the silence. A large scar marred his face, but it was his fierce expression and pale skin like that of a corpse that struck fear into anyone who saw him. What's the matter? Is my ghastly appearance bothering you? Ah. The girl screamed in pain as he suddenly grabbed her wrist tightly. The man, filled with jealousy, snarled each word. So you dare to cheat on me, don't you? That Baron has you so infatuated, huh? Did he promise you something? What kind of future do you see with him? The girl struggled weakly to resist. Look at what you're doing, she cried. The man hissed. Madelyn, no matter how much you change, you and I are still husband and wife. Madelyn's tears of despair fell as she sneered. Husband? Do you think you have the right to call yourself my husband? You've never treated me like a wife. Just end it all. Her scream only enraged him further as he tightened his grip on her wrist, causing her even more pain. Do you love him that much? He demanded. Madelyn cried out. Let me go. The man's eyes grew even more menacing. You will never escape from me. Even if you die and this cursed mansion crumbles to the ground, you will not leave. Madelyn struggled desperately. Why are you treating me like this? What have I done wrong? I don't want to stay here for another second. I can't spend the rest of my life being trapped like a ghost in this place. Don't you dare try to stop me. In a moment of carelessness due to her anger, Madelyn didn't notice the stairs in front of her and fell headlong down. In that instant, thoughts of her husband's suspicions about her infidelity resurfaced. If I could even consider something as luxurious as love, it would only be for revenge, not affection. Revenge on the man who has imprisoned me here, letting me wither away. Revenge on Nottingham. Suddenly, everything around her went silent. I had thought my death would bring an end to it all. I've lived in this hell on earth for 6 long years, but in the end, I'm left with the reputation of a treacherous wife, full of disgrace. In her final moments, the last image Madelyn saw was her husband weeping in despair. But inside, she felt an overwhelming satisfaction. Madelyn smirked bitterly. Even in my last moments, I could make you feel such despair. That's satisfaction enough for me. One morning at the magnificent Renfield Manor, birds chirped outside the balcony, basking in the bright sunlight. Everything was full of life, and Madelyn found herself back to her girlhood at the age of 17. As a maid combed Madelyn's hair, she asked, My lady hasn't been well these past few days. Everyone's worried that your health might deteriorate. Madelyn, flipping through a newspaper, replied, I'm fine, thank you. The maid, who had always taken care of Madelyn, knew her mistress's temperament well. A few days ago, she had been laughing and then crying, her mood unpredictable. Yet today, she was suddenly calm and even reading the newspaper. But Madelyn was merely confirming if everything was real. The newspaper read the year 1914, the time when her misfortunes began. After her mother's death, she and her father had lived happily together. However, her father was always lost in the luxury of a gentleman's lifestyle. She herself wore silk dresses and cared for nothing else in the world. But that wealthy life didn't last long. In just one night, all their assets were wiped out due to her father's failed business ventures, and he chose the most extreme way to end his life. In the will he left behind, there wasn't a single word addressed to his daughter. Thus, Madelyn left with nothing but empty hands and later married the Earl of Nottingham, a man she had never met. This marriage could have been a miraculous salvation for the young girl, but then war broke out, ravaging both his face and soul. In the end, the two of them plunged each other into the abyss of despair, and their marriage ended in tragedy. As Madelyn walked through the peaceful garden, she pondered silently. If I'm 17 this year, then the disaster of losing all our assets isn't far away. If I could stop father from investing in that risky business venture, perhaps our future would change. But my foolish father is wandering all over Europe. When will he ever sit down to review his finances? What shocked me the most was that father didn't mention me at all in his will. Oh, Madelyn? Her father's voice snapped her back to reality. A father? Her father cheerfully continued. You came all the way out here to welcome me? How sweet of you. Come on, get in the carriage with me. Madelyn remained silent for a moment. She was still angry with him for always leaving her alone, but deep down, she still loved and missed her father. So, she vowed to herself that in this second life, she wouldn't miss any opportunities. I must find a way for father and me to survive, and most importantly, I should avoid getting involved with Ian Nottingham. Just as she was thinking this, a man who was both unfamiliar and familiar was already sitting in the carriage. Oh, today I invited a guest. Let me introduce you to my daughter, Lord Nottingham. The man looked at her with an indifferent and cold expression. On the way back to Renfield Manor, her father continuously chatted warmly with Ian, but he was only casually gazing out the window and responding politely. Madelyn couldn't hide her confusion, because at this time in her previous life, Ian was supposed to be in London, not here. I heard that your risky business venture is progressing quite well. Truly, your business acumen is not to be underestimated. Madelyn looked at the man before her, unable to hide her discomfort. Could this really be Ian Nottingham? No way. Yan, in the previous life. Crash. The sound of a glass shattering echoed throughout the room, accompanied by Yan's angry shout, "I told you not to touch me." Madelyn, startled and trembling, hurriedly apologized. Aside from the long-serving attendants by his side, Yan didn't allow anyone to touch him, not even the wife who shared his bed. Back to the present, Madelyn still stared intently at the man named Yan, silently questioning. The man noticed her gaze fixed on him. Instead of calling out her unsettling behavior, he looked back at her with a slight smile. Madelyn tried to avoid his gaze, but although the man sitting opposite her was indeed Ian Nottingham, he didn't resemble the person she had once known. "I've heard that Lord Nottingham here is quite fond of horseback riding. Isn't that so?" He replied, "Yes, that's right. I'm very passionate about speed." Her father admired him greatly. "Truly, you have refined tastes." Hearing this, Madelyn became even more confused. Horseback riding? He's not crippled. Not yelling at me? This can't be the same person. She recalled her previous life when she was 22 years old. It was a day that any girl in the world would dream of. Seeing her anxious expression, the butler approached and asked, "Are you nervous, my lady?" Madelyn responded, "Yes." The butler reassured her, "He is a good man, so you need not worry." Madelyn spoke up, "I'm not scared. It's just that I'm not sure if I can be a good wife." At first, I didn't have any ill feelings toward Yan. Even though we married without love, I still hoped that our marriage would be happy. I promised myself I would become the guiding light for this deeply troubled man, would be faithful, heal him, and become a wise and admirable wife. But that small hope of mine was shattered on our wedding night. That night, Ian didn't come to their bedroom, not just on the first night, but every night after. When Madelyn tried to approach him, he ignored her completely, passing by like a breeze. Her dream world seemed to crumble entirely. Yan didn't even want to face her, not even once. The bitterness and loneliness within her only grew. "It seems you've forgotten that I exist, haven't you?" Ian didn't even glance at her, replying indifferently, "That's not true." His attitude only made Madelyn angrier. "I'm so tired of this," she said, her voice cold and angry. It was only then that Ian paid attention to her. The very next day, Ian sent her a gift, a golden-furred puppy that was trembling all over. Of course, he didn't give it to her directly. He had the butler bring it to her. Madelyn could only close her book in frustration. "He sent this puppy to keep me company?" Madelyn thought for a moment, then reached out to touch the puppy. Though it was clearly frightened and trembling, the puppy gently licked her fingers in greeting. Madelyn was instantly charmed. "You're as scared as I am," she thought as she cradled the puppy in her arms, finding some comfort in its presence. "We've arrived." Madelyn was startled back to reality by her father's booming voice. The butler respectfully greeted the owner of the estate. He seemed very excited to be home, especially with a new guest. "Madelyn, why don't you show Lord Nottingham around the estate while we wait?" Madelyn tried to avoid it. "Father, I'm not feeling well." "Oh, well, how about you play a piano piece for us while we enjoy tea?" "I'm sorry, I'd like to rest." Her father became flustered, but our honored guest, Ian, interrupted him. "It's all right." Ian bowed politely. "It's a pleasure to meet you, my lady." Madelyn calmly apologized and asked for his understanding. The man named Ian Nottingham was right in front of her, but this was the Ian from before misfortune had struck. Whenever those memories surfaced in her mind, she found herself wondering if she should intervene in his fate. Perhaps his life could be happier. Thinking of this, Madelyn quickly dismissed the thought and sighed helplessly. "Haven't you suffered enough, Madelyn? Your fate is already sealed. Don't repeat the same mistakes. It'll be better for both of you. If this is to be our final fleeting encounter, I should have run away in the previous life. That would have been the best way to avoid any further TIs with him. In her private room, Madelyn was reviewing land documents, trying to plan financially before the war began. But if I can't stop father from pouring money into risky ventures, soon enough, we'll both be on the streets, begging for food. Just as she was wondering what to do, there was a knock on the door. Madelyn, may I come in? Of course, father. I was just about to come find you. Her father handed her a letter. This is an invitation for you from London. I don't think this is the right time to make an appearance in high society, Madelyn sighed. She had no desire to attend any lavish parties. Do I have to go, father? Madelyn's father was taken aback by her expression. My darling daughter, you're not happy? I mean, all you do is read newspapers and scold me for spending money. Don't you want to get married anymore? Madelyn calmly replied, I never said that, father. Her father grew more anxious. If you don't want to socialize with the upper class, it's the same as not wanting to get married. I've even bought a townhouse in London for us to move into 1.at this. Madelyn finally spoke seriously. Since you mentioned it, father, I must say, you should sell that house. Her father's face immediately turned pale. Madelyn, don't talk nonsense like that. Madelyn continued, and father, you should stop investing in the wine business. Her father was taken aback. How do you know about that? He suddenly changed his tone. Don't tell me you've been reading all my letters? That's outrageous. It's shameful. Stay out of my business dealings. This is not appropriate for a lady like you. Madelyn maintained her cold demeanor. Father, if you continue to pour money into the wine business, I will never set foot in high society, nor will I consider marriage. Her father could only shout in frustration, Madelyn, but she just smiled brightly and declared she wouldn't hesitate to become a nun for the rest of her life. Her father, now trembling with anger, confined Madelyn to her room to reflect on her behavior. However, a few days later, she was still dragged to London to attend the ball. Are you sure you've burned all those contracts, father? She asked. Her father responded nervously. I'm sure. You've been keeping an eye on me the whole time, haven't you? Madelyn questioned him further. You didn't keep any copies, did you? He replied hesitantly, Of course not. Why would I deceive you? Please, just let it go. But, aren't you planning to dance with anyone? You've turned down 6 suitors already. Why? Madelyn responded warily. I just don't know. Her attitude left her father flustered. Madelyn, as a member of the Renfield family, it's your duty to marry a wealthy man and support our family. I truly don't understand you, my daughter. Madelyn sighed and thought to herself, these lavish parties will be destroyed by war anyway. I don't want to act like a beautifully dressed puppet anymore. This time, I want to choose my own future. I want to find the right path, as long as it gets me away from that inevitable downfall. Perhaps I should continue studying piano. I've heard that women will be able to find jobs when the war ends. Maybe someday I would like to have a job too. Madelyn was lost in thought when someone approached her. These kinds of parties don't seem to suit you, do they, Miss Renfield? Madelyn's eyes widened in surprise. Nottingham. She quickly turned her face away. Not at all. It's just, don't you see what, Miss Nottingham? Yan asked, confused. How everyone is still so cheerful with each other, Madelyn replied. That's what's worrying. No one knows what the future holds. Yan smiled brightly. True. We can't know what will come our way. We can't even guess. So why don't we just enjoy this moment while we still can? Even if you refuse to enjoy it, it won't stop what's bound to happen. So, why not relax? Madelyn hesitated, but the tragedies of war still haunted her. I am relaxed, she said. Yan was puzzled by her conflicted expression. I just find these kinds of parties to be a waste of time, that's all, she added. Yan, intrigued, responded. I don't mean to say that parties are meaningless, nor am I criticizing those who are dancing over there. It's just that this isn't what I want. Yan smiled slightly. And what if what you want is to dance with me, Miss Renfield? Madelyn's eyes widened. What? Yan courteously extended an invitation. Miss Madelyn Renfield, may I have this dance? Madelyn's eyes grew wide. I have no obligation to save anyone, and certainly no obligation to save Yan. She had already decided to use this second chance at life to avoid Nottingham. The further away, the better. But if nothing changes, Yan will have to join the war and go through those terrible experiences. They will devastate both his body and soul. If this future deviates just a little, it wouldn't be so bad, would it? If the rest of his life could be even a little happier, maybe I should give him some advice. A few minutes earlier, a man had spoken in a mocking tone. Look at her, he said. The man sitting across from him frowned slightly. There are tons of ladies here. Which one are you talking about? The man gestured in one direction and continued. I've been counting how many dance invitations she's rejected. 6, at least 6 men have been turned down by her. Hearing his friends grumbling, Yen followed his gaze and recognized a familiar face. Ah, isn't that the daughter of the Baron? How interesting. I've already run into her again. While Yan was musing to himself, his 2 friends continued their conversation. Should I go over and talk to her? One of them asked. The other quickly held him back. Forget it. You don't even know who she is. That's inappropriate. This isn't the Victorian era anymore. What's inappropriate about talking to a girl? Just watch. I'll go over there and, before he could make a move, a hand pressed him back down. Yan, effortlessly cool, walked over first. The other man, frustrated at being outmaneuvered, grumbled. Hey. His friend sighed in amazement. I never thought I'd see the day when Yan Nottingham would approach a girl on his own. Amidst the soft music, 2 young ladies whispered to each other. Hey, they've danced together for times already. Who is that girl dancing with Lord Nottingham? It seems she's just a lady from some countryside estate. Yin suddenly spoke up. Miss Madelyn Renfield, are you all right? Madelyn, confused, replied, yes? What do you mean? Yin continued, your hand is trembling. Only then did Madelyn notice the trembling of her hands. She anxiously searched for an explanation but couldn't find any. And again Ian remarked, the way you're looking at me, it's as if you're pitying me. A heavy silence enveloped them. Madelyn thought, should I tell him? Or should I let him go and never look back? Lost in her thoughts, Madelyn accidentally bumped into another lady who was dancing nearby. The lady exclaimed, Miss Renfield, be careful. The lady's rose-shaped hairpin suddenly fell to the ground after the collision. Madelyn reflected, if fate has brought us together once more, then maybe I will have to endure lonely days and an unhappy life. But what should I do? When Madelyn was 26, she loved tending to her rose garden and soon realized that someone had plucked the beautiful roses she had painstakingly cared for. Madelyn pondered, who could have done this? Everyone here knew how carefully Madelyn had tended to the garden. She turned to question the dog. Corey, did you do this? The dog cheerfully barked, as if proclaiming his innocence. Madelyn sighed. I guess it wasn't you, huh? You could chew the flowers, but how could you neatly pluck them like that? The dog, hearing this, happily agreed. Madelyn continued, but whoever picked the flowers, I just hope my flower could bring them a little bit of joy, right, Corey? Just then, the sound of footsteps approached. A man's cold voice spoke. Go inside, Madelyn. Madelyn shouted. But what about Corey? Ian coldly responded. Forget about it. It's just an animal. Getting a cold just because you're looking for a dog? That's ridiculous. Madelyn spat back through clenched teeth. How could you say that? You're the one who brought him to me. In this entire mansion, he's the only one who truly cares about me. Ian grabbed her shoulders and commanded in a deep voice, Madelyn, go inside. Madelyn became desperate. She could only stand there, frozen, staring at her husband in the pouring rain. Miss Renfield, are you all right? Ian asked. Madelyn brushed his hand away and responded, yes, I'm fine. She then lifted her skirt and excused herself. It was a pleasure dancing with you, Lord Nottingham. Have a good evening, she said. Ian wanted to call her back, but Madelyn quickly walked away. He stroked his chin and muttered, she didn't change her tone after for dances. I'm a bit disappointed. A little later, the servants brought out delicious dishes to serve the distinguished guests. Madelyn couldn't believe she was dragged into the dining table, and to make matters worse, she was seated directly across from Lord Nottingham. Already in no mood to eat, she had to witness this quarrel between the Nottingham siblings. Isabel snapped. How could you say that? Stop making a scene. Ian retorted. Lower your voice, Isabel. It's no wonder you were deceived by that scoundrel. Isabel became even more agitated. She retorted, making a scene? What do you mean, scoundrel? Madelyn thought to herself. So, this is Isabel Nottingham. In my previous life, When I married Ian, he no longer had any family left in this world. His younger brother, Eric, had volunteered for the battlefield and died, while his younger sister, Isabel, had been killed in a car accident before the war even broke out. There were rumors that it was a premeditated accident. It seemed that at the time, she was in a relationship with a man from a lower class. Unable to endure the social prejudices, they decided to die together. That day, I thought that Ian might not have worn that sorrowful expression if his two siblings were still alive. After Isabel's death, Ian never touched her belongings and kept everything in place, so they would always remind him of his regrets and inner desires. Madelyn remembered, when she was 22, she had once touched Isabel's late piano without permission. The room had no trace of dust, which showed that the servants had been cleaning it regularly. She thought, how much must a brother miss his sister to do such things? While lost in thought, she noticed something on the floor. Is that a photograph? It was a picture of Lady Isabel, but she didn't recognize the man beside her. Above the photo were the words, "For the one my heart cherishes, G. Cherry Milov." Madelyn thought, maybe it fell out from behind this. As she was about to put the photo back, she discovered that the sheet music was all handwritten. Next to it, there were many more pictures of the two of them together. Madelyn realized, I understand now. Isabel wrote these pieces for her lover. I heard he was a socialist, but I don't know much about politics. Isabel Nottingham. What kind of person was she really? Was she a delicate and elegant person who loved playing the piano? Or was she a vibrant and passionate soul who could die for love? Whatever the case may be, the sound of the piano she once played must have enveloped this gloomy mansion in a warm and bright embrace. If Lady Isabel were still alive, perhaps Ian wouldn't have. Suddenly, the door was forcefully flung open by a man, startling Madelyn, who stood there, still trying to comprehend what was happening. Ian, she called out, noticing his whole body trembling as he growled, "Get out." Now, Madelyn, who had grown accustomed to being pushed away, couldn't hold back her anger and retorted, "Ian, I'm your wife. If you have any respect for me, you owe me an explanation as to why." Before she could finish her sentence, Ian cut her off. Never enter this room again. Back then, Madelyn thought he deeply loved his sister, but in reality, the two of them had been arguing endlessly. Crash. Something suddenly shattered. Isabel stood up angrily and screamed at her brother, "You're the real scoundrel here." She grabbed her hat and prepared to leave. Ian called out, "Isabel, where are you going? Sit down." Isabel snapped back, "I'm done here. I can't even breathe around you. I don't want to live in a place like this anymore." Every word Isabel uttered brought back memories from Madelyn's past life. Wait a minute, today is the day Isabel dies. As soon as this thought crossed her mind, Madelyn quickly stood up and excused herself from the table. What will Madelyn do to prevent Isabel's death? Will she succeed? Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow the next part of the story.